What I barely survived defies any logic, but I experienced it firsthand. That night, I nearly lost my mind. He came for me after so many years, and I'm terrified it might happen again. It all started with an incident back in '89 when I was still in high school. I wasn't exactly a model student, more of a troublemaker, always pulling pranks and getting sent to the principal's office. I wasn't alone. My buddies Mike and Jake were just as bad. One day, our homeroom teacher introduced a new student. He was an ordinary-looking guy, but pretty overweight. The class immediately dubbed him Tubby. He sat at the back, pulled out a crumpled notebook, and started scribbling. It was clear he was shy and introverted. His name was Paul, though we barely registered it at the time. Everyone picked on Paul. He was unkempt, always had his backpack unzipped, wore dirty clothes, had greasy hair, and horrible breath. Instead of helping, we just mocked him. But when it came time to copy homework, suddenly everyone tolerated his presence. Just typical two-faced kids. The incident happened during gym class on a spring day. My friend decided to pants Paul in front of everyone, exposing him to the entire school. There was pointing, laughter, and utter humiliation. Paul ran back inside, crying. Months of bullying had finally broken him, and I felt a pang of guilt. I considered befriending him, but it was too late. I was one of the tormentors. That day, Paul took his own life. He jumped from a window onto a bathroom stall, breaking his neck. His mother screamed at our class, "You'll all regret this, you monsters!" Her words gave me chills. The police ruled it an accident, and life went on. We graduated, some went to college, others to work, and a few turned to crime. Those were tough times. Everyone forgot about Tubby. I lost touch with my classmates. They'd grown up to be losers, and my two friends became junkies. I started my own business selling imported clothes and eventually bought an apartment. Recently, we had a high school reunion. Only 8 out of 30 showed up, mostly working dead-end jobs. I was shocked to learn that half our class had died. Murders, accidents, suicides. My 2 school buddies had overdosed. I left feeling awful, unaware that the cause of these deaths was... I got home, made coffee, and tried to process everything. The next night, exhausted from work, I noticed a horrible smell in my building. I rushed inside, showered, made coffee, and went to smoke on the balcony. I heard quick footsteps below, then saw someone dart across the playground. Strange, but I ignored it and went to bed. At 2 a.m., I heard the rusty swing creaking, then a rock smashed my window. Another followed. I looked out and froze. There stood Paul, looking exactly as he had 20 years ago in his gym clothes, head tilted unnaturally. He stared right at me, not casting a shadow. Suddenly he laughed and ran inside. I heard children's laughter, then pounding on my door. When it stopped, I checked. No one there. I relaxed briefly until I saw Paul sitting on my kitchen window, pale as death with glowing yellow eyes and foaming mouth. He banged on the glass, mouthing something. I grabbed a crucifix, but it had no effect. Memories flooded back, his mother's curse, my classmates' deaths. I apologized, asking what he wanted. He gestured for me to open the window. Through a crack, he squeaked, "Will you kill me? I want a set of cans." He reached through, but I smashed his hand with a paperweight. He squealed, oozing black tar-like liquid, then vanished. I sat stunned, trying to make sense of it all. The scariest part? I accidentally got some of that liquid on my hand and leg while cleaning. Now, 2 days later, they're numb, and I found holes appearing. I need to get to a hospital, fast. I'm lying here, unsure if I'll make it through this. The numbness is spreading and the holes are getting bigger. I can't help but think about Paul and all that happened. Looking back, we were just dumb kids. We didn't understand the impact of our actions. But that doesn't excuse what we did. Paul was different, sure, but he didn't deserve what happened to him. Now it seems like his mother's words weren't just angry threats. They were a real curse. I've been doing some research online, trying to make sense of what's happening to me. There are stories of vengeful spirits, of course, but nothing quite like this. Could Paul really have come back? And why now, after all these years? I keep replaying that night in my head. The smell in the building, the footsteps, the laughter. It was all building up to that moment in the kitchen. Those glowing eyes, that twisted smile. I'll never forget it. Part of me wonders if I'm just going crazy. Maybe the guilt of what we did to Paul finally caught up with me, and my mind created this whole scenario. But then I look at my hand and leg, see those strange holes, and I know it's real. I've tried calling some of my old classmates, the ones who are still around. Most of them didn't want to talk about the past. A few hung up as soon as I mentioned Paul's name. But one of them, Jenny, she said something that chilled me to the bone. "I've seen him too," she whispered. "In my dreams at first. Then he was in my house. I thought I was losing my mind." Jenny's the only other one who showed any remorse back then. We both tried to be nicer to Paul in those last few weeks, but it was too little, too late. Now I wonder if that's why we're the last ones left. I've called my buddy Tom to take me to the hospital. He thinks I'm just having some kind of breakdown, keeps telling me to calm down. But he hasn't seen what I've seen. He doesn't know what's coming for us, for me. As I wait for Tom, I can't shake this feeling of dread. What if Paul is waiting for me at the hospital? What if this is all part of his plan? The numbness is creeping up my arm now, and I swear I can smell that awful stench again. I don't know what's going to happen next. Maybe the doctors can help me, or maybe this is how it ends. All I know is that the past has a way of catching up with you, no matter how far you run or how long you hide. If anyone's reading this, remember, your actions have consequences. Be kind to people, even if they're different. You never know what someone's going through, or what might come back to haunt you years later. I hear footsteps outside my door now. Is it Tom coming to help, or is it Paul coming to finish what he started? I guess I'll find out soon enough. Whatever happens, I hope my story serves as a warning. Don't make the same mistakes we did. Be better than we were. The doorknob is turning. I hope it's Tom, but deep down I know it's not. I can smell that awful stench again. It's him. He's here. And I think this time he's not leaving without me. As the door creaks open, my heart races. The stench intensifies, and I'm paralyzed with fear. But instead of Paul's ghostly figure, it's Tom, looking worried and confused. "Jesus, what's that smell?" he asks, wrinkling his nose. "And what happened to your window?" I try to explain, but the words jumble in my mouth. Tom's eyes widen as he notices my hand and leg. "We need to get you to the ER now," he says firmly. As we leave my apartment, I can't shake the feeling we're being watched. In the elevator, the lights flicker, and for a split second, I swear I see Paul's reflection in the metal doors. At the hospital, the doctors are baffled. They run tests, take samples, and whisper among themselves. I overhear phrases like unknown pathogen and tissue necrosis. It doesn't sound good. While I'm waiting for results, Jenny shows up. She looks terrible, pale, with dark circles under her eyes. "It's getting worse, isn't it?" she asks quietly. I nod, and we share a look of understanding and fear. Just then, the lights in the hospital corridor start to flicker. A chill runs down my spine as I hear the squeaking of rubber-soled shoes on linoleum, getting closer and closer. Jenny grabs my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "He's here," she whispers. The door to my room slowly opens, and the overwhelming stench of decay fills the air. As Paul's ghostly figure appears in the doorway, I realize this is far from over. In fact, it's only just beginning. His yellowed eyes lock onto mine, and a twisted grin spreads across his face. "Ready for gym class?" he asks in that thin, squeaky voice. Jenny screams, and I try to call for help, but no sound comes out. As Paul approaches, the lights in the room explode in a shower of sparks, plunging us into darkness. In the chaos that follows, I feel a cold, clammy hand grab my wrist. The numbness in my arm spreads rapidly, and I know I'm running out of time. As consciousness starts to fade, I have one last coherent thought. Maybe this is justice. Maybe this is what we deserve for what we did all those years ago. The last thing I hear before everything goes black is Paul's childlike laughter, echoing through the darkness. And I know that our long overdue punishment has only just begun. Tom arrives quickly, his face etched with concern as he helps me to his car. The drive to the hospital is a blur of streetlights and nausea. I drift in and out of consciousness, the image of Paul's twisted face haunting my fleeting moments of lucidity. At the ER, the doctors are baffled by my condition. They run tests, take samples, and whisper among themselves with furrowed brows. I overhear fragments of their discussions. Unknown pathogen, rapid tissue degradation. Never seen anything like it. Their confusion does nothing to ease my growing terror. As I lie in the hospital bed, hooked up to various machines, I can't shake the feeling of being watched. The shadows in the corners of the room seem to move, and every creak of the building sends a shiver down my spine. I try to convince myself it's just paranoia, a side effect of the trauma and whatever is happening to my body. But deep down, I know better. Days pass in a haze of tests and medication. The numbness spreads and the holes in my skin grow larger. The doctors are at a loss, their treatments seemingly ineffective against this mysterious ailment. I drift in and out of fevered dreams, each one featuring Paul's ghostly figure, his eyes glowing with malevolent glee. One night, as I lie awake, unable to sleep due to the constant pain, I hear a familiar squeaking sound. It's the same noise I heard from the rusty swing in my yard that fateful night. My heart races as I scan the dimly lit room, searching for any sign of Paul's presence. There in the corner, I see a shadow move. It takes shape, forming into the unmistakable silhouette of a chubby child. Paul steps into the faint light cast by the monitoring equipment, his form flickering like a faulty hologram. "Miss me?" he asks, his voice a chilling mix of childish glee and otherworldly menace. I try to call for help, but my voice fails me. Paul approaches, each step accompanied by that awful squeaking noise. He reaches out, his cold, clammy hand brushing against my arm. Where he touches, the numbness intensifies, and I watch in horror as new holes form in my skin. "Why are you doing this?" I manage to croak out. Paul's face contorts into a grimace of pain and anger. "You all took everything from me," he hisses. "My dignity, my future, my life. Now I'm taking it all back, one by one." As he speaks, memories flood my mind, not just of our cruelty to Paul, but of all the small kindnesses I could have shown, but didn't. The times I could have spoken up, could have extended a hand in friendship, could have made a difference. The weight of those missed opportunities crushes me more than any ghostly touch ever could. "I'm sorry," I whisper, tears streaming down my face. "We were just stupid kids. We didn't understand." "But you did," Paul interrupts, his voice cold. "Deep down, you all knew it was wrong. You just didn't care." He's right, I realize. We always knew on some level that what we were doing was cruel. We just chose to ignore that knowledge, to push aside our conscience in favor of cheap laughs and social status. As this realization washes over me, something changes in Paul's expression. The anger fades, replaced by a profound sadness. "It's too late for sorry," he says softly. "But maybe it's not too late for understanding." With that, he places his hand on my forehead. Instantly, I'm overwhelmed by a flood of emotions and memories, but they're not mine. I'm experiencing Paul's life, feeling every moment of pain, loneliness, and despair that we inflicted upon him. The constant fear, the crushing self-doubt, the desperate longing for acceptance that was always just out of reach. I feel the sting of every insult, the shame of every prank, the gut-wrenching pain of betrayal when those he thought might be friends turned on him for a laugh. I experienced the depths of his despair on that final day, the moment when he decided that leaving this world was better than enduring one more day of torment. When the vision fades, I'm gasping for air, my face wet with tears. Paul stands by my bedside, watching me with an unreadable expression. "Now you know," he says simply. "I'm so sorry," I sob, the words feeling woefully inadequate in the face of what I've just experienced. I had no idea. We were so cruel, so thoughtless. Paul nods, a glimmer of something like forgiveness in his eyes. That's all I wanted, he says, for someone to truly understand. As he speaks, I notice something changing. The holes in my skin begin to close, the numbness receding. Paul's form becomes more transparent, fading like mist in the morning sun. What's happening? I ask, my voice a mix of hope and fear. My work here is done, Paul replies, his voice growing fainter. Remember this feeling. Use it to make sure no one else suffers like I did. With those final words, Paul vanishes completely. The room feels lighter somehow, as if a great weight has been lifted. I look down at my arm and leg, amazed to see that all traces of the mysterious ailment have disappeared. The next morning, the doctors are astounded by my miraculous recovery. They run more tests, searching for any scientific explanation, but find nothing. I don't try to explain. Who would believe me? As I'm discharged from the hospital, I make a vow to myself. Paul's last words echo in my mind, and I know what I have to do. I reach out to local schools offering to speak about bullying and its consequences. I start a support group for both victims and reformed bullies. Creating a space for healing and understanding, it's not easy work. Reliving those memories, facing the consequences of my past actions is painful. But every time I see understanding dawn in someone's eyes, every time I help a kid find the courage to stand up for themselves or others, I know it's worth it. Years pass, and my work expands. I write books, give talks at conferences, and even start a nonprofit dedicated to creating kinder, more inclusive school environments. The guilt never fully goes away, but it's tempered by the knowledge that I'm working to prevent others from experiencing what Paul did. One day, as I'm leaving a school after giving a talk, I see a familiar figure in the distance. It's Paul, but not the vengeful spirit I encountered in the hospital. This Paul looks peaceful, almost radiant. He gives me a small smile and a nod before fading away. I realize then that this is what redemption looks like. Not an erasure of past sins, but a commitment to doing better, to using the lessons of the past to create a better future. Paul's revenge wasn't about punishment. It was about understanding, about ensuring that his suffering wasn't in vain. As I drive home, I feel a sense of peace I haven't known in years. The weight of the past will always be with me, but now it drives me forward instead of holding me back. And somewhere, I hope, Paul is at peace too, knowing that his story continues to make a difference in the world. The scars of our actions may never fully heal, but they can become a map, guiding us toward compassion, understanding, and the chance to be better than we once were. In the end, that's the most powerful form of redemption, not forgetting the past, but using it to shape a kinder future. And so, as I continue my work, I carry Paul's memory with me. Not as a haunting specter, but as a reminder of the power of empathy, the importance of kindness, and the enduring impact of our actions on others. It's a heavy responsibility, but one I'm grateful to bear. For in honoring Paul's memory and helping others, I've found a way to heal not just myself, but to contribute to healing the world, one small act of kindness at a time.